Hi, and welcome to today's bonus interview. You all know me by now, but I'm going to say it for the last time this series. I am Marika Timmins, and this is the Ethical Entrepreneur. For me, ethics includes generosity, and that is why I wanted to surprise you all with this additional interview. My guest today is also all about generosity, not just to others, but actually in terms of taking care of self. The analogy of putting your own mask on before attending to others is perfect for today's chat because we're talking about burnout and how workplace wellbeing starts with you. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
So Kim Knight is a transformational coach and thought leader in the new healthcare paradigm, the one where you, the patient, plays a leading role in your own healthcare story. Kim's passion is teaching people they have the power to take control of their well-being with the right tools and strategies. Her signature TKM root cause analysis gets to the root of problems in lightning speed, and her lifestyle medicine protocol is one of the most comprehensive approaches in the world. Thanks for being here, Kim, and sharing your vision and your own healthcare journey with us today.
Well, thank you for the invite.
So a recent study by Michael Freeman stated that 49% of all entrepreneurs are at risk of at least one mental illness, which is a crazy statistic. Entrepreneurial burnout isn't new, but I'm guessing in COVID times, it's even more of a risk. Why are entrepreneurs and business owners so susceptible to burnout and mental illness?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons, but the overriding reason why we tend to get ill or burn out or whatever health issues we get, whether they're mental or physical, is because we're not taking care of ourselves. And the reason we're not taking care of ourselves is because we actually don't know how to do it. It sounds really crazy. It's like we're intelligent people, and often as entrepreneurs, we're exceptionally intellectually intelligent, and we may have Harvard degrees or whatever, which is considered, being intelligent and well educated. But there's a big difference between intellectual intelligence and emotional intelligence. And what happens in our society, especially in the Western world, not so much in more sort of so-called third world countries, but in the Western world, we're brought up very disconnected between the head and the body, or we can say between the head intelligence and the body intelligence. And we actually have three brains in our body. We have a head brain, a brain in our heart, and a brain in our gut. And the definition of a brain is a network of neurons with intelligent purpose. So we literally have three brains in our body. But most people, through our educational system in the Western world, where we go to school and we learn lots of facts and figures and regurgitate them in exams, a high price is or high value is put on that type of intelligence. Yeah. But very little, or up until now, has been very little time spent on teaching people how to listen to their body and how to read the feedback from their body, how to interpret the messages that their body is giving them, which ultimately is all about maintaining health and safety and homeostasis, because our body's job is to keep us healthy and happy. That is its job, and that's what it wants. And it communicates to us in certain ways in order to make sure that we are staying healthy and happy, which we're totally able to do. We're able to stay healthy and happy. We're able to prevent illness. We're able to optimize our health. But unless we know how to listen to our body and read the signals, we're going to override all the signals. And that's what most people are doing. They're not hearing the feedback, because the body has a three-level system of communication. And the first level is through what we call felt sensations. For example, a gut feeling of that doesn't feel right is a felt sensation, but often then we'll override with the mind. It's like, oh, well, I have to do this because, or we'll rationalize away, and a rationalization is a rational lie. So we ignore our body communication and we ignore the next level of communication after the felt sensations, which is the emotions, the feelings, the frustration. For example, I've got too much work on my plate and I feel frustrated. That's the body saying, I can't cope. You're putting too much on my plate. It's too much for me to maintain homeostasis and balance and health with this workload. And I'm very sensibly and intelligently, because the body has incredible intelligence, I'm sending you this feedback to say, this is too much. Something has to give, something has to be taken out, delegated, whatever. But most people, they don't recognize the feedback and they override it, or they put up with it. And that all comes back to, what's happening in the workplace. What are my beliefs about myself? Do I have the courage to stand up for myself and speak my truth and create boundaries and all that sort of stuff? And so we override and we override and we override, and we put the body under stress for a long period of time. And eventually, bit by bit, we wear ourselves down and we get exhausted, and then we find ourselves being diagnosed with some sort of illness. That's part of the answer to the question.
Yeah. So we wait until somebody else diagnoses it for us. Is that what?
Yes, it's called the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. So rather than taking care of ourselves, and in fact, in ancient China, when you went to your doctor, you only paid them if I get this right round the right way, you only paid them if you were well. Because if you got ill, it meant they hadn't done their job in educating you in how to stay well. Right. So, we have a lot to learn in preventative health care. And that means that we have to learn it for ourselves, because we live in a system which predominantly is about, okay, you have a symptom, you have a problem, you go to a medical profession, they diagnose it, and then they give you something to manage that symptom or to somehow eradicate it. But there's not a lot of time spent on actually delving into, well, why actually is this happening? It's starting to happen more now, but since in my 20s and 30s and 40s, that definitely wasn't the case. So there's a lot of re-education that needs to happen, both for the individual to take more responsibility for their own well-being and understand themselves better, but also for employers to spend more time focusing on this and helping their teams understand themselves.
Yeah. So you mentioned a few of the signs. It's that gut instinct, it's the emotions that come up. What are the sorts of things that we should be looking out for as signs of probably stress, but an unhealthy workplace environment or body, I guess, just in general? What are those
signs? The signs always come from inside. It's not about signs outside so much, that because the feedback is always going to be inside. It's like, how am I responding in every moment of every day? And the way that the body responds is through either going into the stress response, as opposed to being in a nice, calm, relaxed state, which is our natural state. And when we go into the stress response, there are a lot of consequences and changes that happen inside the body when the body is in the stress response, because the body perceives it's under threat. It feels that somehow the life is threatened. And there are a lot of chemical, physiological, biological changes that happen in the body when we're in the fight, flight, or freeze response. So, for example, we may go into overwhelm and have brain fog because the neocortex isn't working as well as it should, because the blood is being driven to the reptilian brain for survival. And so that's when you have a simple task in front of you, but you can't do it, and you're just in overwhelm or anxiety. Now that's a sign. That's a sign that the body is in stress and it's gone into survival mode, and it needs some help to take it out of that state. Other signs are, for example, as I mentioned before, frustration. Frustration is an anger there is a spectrum of emotions from slightly ticked off to rage and everything in between, including annoyance and anger. And when this is something that I discovered for myself, it wasn't something that I was taught, but I learned that that anger is a protective emotion, and it is protecting us again. It comes back to survival. But if we're overdoing it and we're doing too much and we're not taking enough breaks, and we're not maybe having a proper lunch break or whatever it is, the body will send the emotion of frustration, because again it's saying, this is not okay, I can't cope like this, you're demanding too much of me. And so we need to start listening to these emotional signals. Another one that comes along with that is impatience. Say you're doing a task at your computer, and you start to notice that you're feeling really impatient. Then it's a sign that you need to step away from the computer for 5 or 10 minutes. And even just 5 or 10 minutes will do it. I noticed that, I would be sitting at my computer and I'd start to feel frustrated and impatient. And then, of course, the mind goes, yes, but I haven't got time to take a break now. I've got all this work to do. But then what Exactly. I started noticing was that if I just took 5 minutes, in my mind, I think, oh, my God, I'm going to need half an hour to rebalance myself. And I'd go outside, sit outside in the sunshine. And within 5 minutes, I'd feel the sense of relief, the sense of relaxation, the calmness coming, the clarity coming back. And I go, okay, I can go back to my desk now. And it only took 5 minutes. And they do say that every hour you need to take at least a 5-minute break. But how many people actually do that? I would say not very many people do that.
No, not at all. And just listening to you talk, I think of the state that I was in when I worked in a corporate environment. I mean, I don't anymore, but yeah, always frustrated, always impatient. And the impact that, that had on my body, but also on my team. And those around me.
But one of the tricky things is that people really don't realize that it is not healthy or natural to be stressed. They think it's natural because in our society, it's almost like a badge of honor. Oh, you're really busy. You're really frantic. Oh, well, that must mean that you're working really well. Okay, well, you get a big tick. Whereas if you go and sit down for 5 minutes. It's a culture
of busyness, isn't it?
It is. And it's interesting because, for example, a country like Samoa, and I've been to Samoa, it's a beautiful country, beautiful people, and they have a much more laid back, relaxed pace of life. And yet Westerners or, New Zealanders may think, oh, they're lazy. No, they're not lazy. They've just got a different pace of life. And actually, we could learn a lot from that pace of life.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, that stress response, when you talked about other parts of the body switching off because you're in that stress response, that is a natural response to a threat, I guess, that years and years ago would have been maybe a tiger chasing us or whatever it is. That is a natural response that your body needs to take to react to something external that's happening. But what we face these days is that culture of busyness and those stress responses being triggered by things that are not really threatening our lives.
That's correct.
And so being in that constant state of stress is not the way our bodies were designed to be.
No, and for example, one of the things that happens when we're in the stress response, the sympathetic nervous system response, or I like to call it SNS or SOS, is that the blood is sent towards the limbs because the body thinks maybe I'm going to have to run away from danger, but it's taken away from the digestive system, and it really impacts the body's ability to digest food. And then people end up with lots of digestive issues and irritable bowel syndrome and whatever it is, and they don't really realize that there's a direct connection here. You've got to deal with your stress.
Yeah, that's right. So if we can recognize that that's happening, how do we avoid burnout? Or if we're in the early stages of burnout, how do we quickly recover from it?
Well, quickly recover, I'd put a question mark there, because it's going to take as long to recover as the body needs. And I discovered that on my journey back from chronic fatigue syndrome, where it took years because I kept on having to discover, well, what is the next piece of the puzzle that I need to learn, and what is it that I need to change It's all about change. It's about stopping the unhealthy habits, taking them out, and bringing in new, healthier habits. And that doesn't happen overnight. So there's a lot of change that needs to happen. As far as preventing burnout, I mean, awareness is key. We have to understand and be in tune with our body. And we have to be able to read those signals that I was talking about before. And we have to notice at any moment that we go into the stress response, we have to notice it. And we have to make the required changes to bring ourselves back into a state of calm. Now, a lot of people will think, well, that's impossible. How can I do my work when I'm not stressed? Well, that's your choice. But if you want to learn how to de-stress, it's possible. But it requires a lot of self-observation or self-awareness. And when I became aware of my stress or massive stress habit, and it is actually a habit, literally it is an addiction. We are addicted to stress, and that habit gets set up, what I've observed, by the age of 7. It gets set up very early on in childhood. So we become unconsciously addicted to being stressed, and because it's an unconscious addiction, we don't even notice it. We don't know that it could be different. So the first step is to become much more self-aware again of what is going on inside my body. What are these felt sensations? What are the emotions? What is the difference between being relaxed and stressed? Do I know the difference? Do I know the difference in feeling inside of me? And when I noticed or became aware, it was like a light bulb moment where I realized the reason that I'm not fully recovering from chronic fatigue is because I'm still stressed. I'd cleared the symptoms, most of the tiredness symptoms, but I wasn't fully well. And I realized that the missing piece was dealing with the stress. And then I realized, wow, I do so many things in my life, like lifestyle habits and behaviors, that actually unconsciously keep me stressed, because unconsciously it's not safe for me to not be stressed. This is all unconscious, remember, until it becomes conscious.
Yeah.
So I made a pact with myself that I was going to do whatever it took to de-stress myself. And that journey took 3 years. Now, I'm not saying it has to take somebody else 3 years, because for me, I was like discovering it for myself rather than somebody leading me. It's much quicker when you're led by somebody else. But one has to become aware of what are the habits that one is doing that are leading oneself down an unhealthy track, or we could say, what are my unhealthy habits, my self-damaging habits that up until now I haven't recognized that I'm actually doing myself damage. And we have to become aware of those habits, and then we have to change them. So, for example, one of my habits was I used to go into my office, because I worked from home. And I'd go into my office at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I go, I'm just going to check my emails for 5 minutes. And then I'll go and have breakfast and do my walk and whatever. I would sit there and I'd be there for 2 or 3 hours. Just another email. And my body would be screaming at me through frustration and impatience, like, get out, I want to get out, I want to go for a walk. And I'd be looking out the window, oh, it's a really lovely sunny day. Wouldn't it be nice to be going for a walk? No, I'll just carry on doing this. And so one of the things that I had to do was ban myself from going into the office until 9 o'clock. And that took 9 months to actually crack that, because it was such a big habit. Crack it properly. I'd have some days where I succeed and some days not, or some days where maybe I'd only do 15 minutes instead of 2 hours on the computer. So we have to just become much, much more aware of the effect that our habits are having on our mental health, our physical health. And often when the symptoms get bad enough and the pain is bad enough, that is, we finally think, okay, well, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this pain anymore. And that is actually the purpose of pain. That the purpose of pain is to bring attention to something that isn't good for us and isn't working, to say, you need to change, and I'm going to make it uncomfortable enough for you that you're going to take notice now. Because when the body is just sending stress or emotional feedback or felt sensations, there's not enough impetus to change. But when it gets painful and uncomfortable, then we want to change.
What resists persists. Yeah. So, listening to all of that, and thinking about the work environment, and workplace wellness is finally, I think, becoming something companies of all sizes are recognizing as fundamental. And that's not just to employee engagement, but actually to performance as well, right? What do you think is driving that?
I think it's the need of the times, because there is so much illness. I mean, you gave the quote of 49% of all entrepreneurs at risk from mental illness, which is, 1 in 2. And the statistics on the number of people visiting doctors with stress or being diagnosed with chronic illness is extreme. And I think people are waking up to the fact that actually there's something that we can do here to improve things, and maybe we need to make a change. I think it's just a global shift that is happening, because it's time to happen and it needs to happen. And if we keep doing the same old, then we're going to get the same old result and even worse results. So unless we make a positive change, and that's happening obviously in many areas of life, not just health, then the change is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and hopefully COVID and the impact of COVID and across the entire world has been a catalyst for that change as well.
It has, because the interesting thing, the way I look at it, is that stress and that mental illness was already there in some shape or form, but the COVID situation has just exacerbated it and made it much more prominent. It wasn't like it wasn't there before. It was there before, but now it's really there and really obvious. And also, it's like when we go through a crisis, we open up somehow, and we open up to new possibilities. And I think the COVID crisis is, and this is a positive outcome of the COVID crisis.
Yeah.
It's been forcing this to happen. And the interesting thing is, having worked for many years with people with chronic fatigue and burnout, that sort of thing, I very clearly come to understand what actually causes those conditions, and actually many health conditions. And what causes it is the slow wearing down of oneself over a period of years. We're not just talking months, it could be months, but more likely years. A slow wearing down of the body, physically, biologically, that then results in certain symptoms manifesting. And the COVID crisis is really a collective version for humanity of the same thing. It's just, rather than showing up individually, it's showing up collectively.
That's right. Yeah, it's a healthcare awakening, maybe.
Well, it's an awakening of not just of healthcare. I mean, it's just an awakening, full stop, for humanity. We need to change our ways. And I remember my Qigong teacher saying, that we harm ourselves and we have to stop self-harming habits and behaviors, and we have to replace them with new, healthy, beneficial behaviors. And we have to do that individually, and individuals make up a collective. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and a common thing throughout this entire series, whether we're talking about the environment or people, and even profit, and sharing that profit throughout the value chain. Yeah, it's all connected.
Yes.
So what does it take to create workplace wellness?
It takes, again, it comes back, it's the individual, but it's also the group. So on an individual level, one has to become more aware of oneself. One has to get dialed into what is happening inside my body, and are my habits beneficial and healthy, or are they damaging? And in order for that to happen, there has to be a certain level of willingness and interest in wanting to do that. Now, often when we're well and everything's going fine, there isn't really an impetus often to want to know that, to want to do it. Yeah. As I said before, when we suddenly find ourselves with a problem, then we're forced to start looking at at ourselves and to start working out what is the solution. But from a company perspective, it takes whoever it is, the leaders, the HR department, whatever, deciding, okay, well, we need to learn about this and we need to find out what is it that we need to change and what is it we need to do differently. And one of the things I think that's really important is that is an openness to seeing things differently and to understanding new information and hearing new information, because often, and it's the same in our own life, we do things a certain way and we think, well, this is the way to do it, and we don't even know that there are other ways to do things that might be better, and we don't go looking for those ways until we're having a problem. So there's a lot of re-education that needs to happen. And for example, 30 years ago, I didn't know any of what I know now. All I knew as far as health was that if you got sick, you went to a doctor and you had medication, or you went for surgery. That was my paradigm of how you deal with health issues. But since then, I've learned a lot more, and there's so many more options. And what we have to do is that we have to move along this continuum from not taking responsibility to taking more responsibility, and eventually to taking actually quite a lot of self-responsibility. But that requires a change, and it requires a change of perspective. And I remember a few years ago, I was at a medical conference with a lot of doctors, and mainly it was doctors, it was a health professional medical conference. And I was suggesting something along these lines of, teaching people to take care of their health. And this doctor sitting next to me said, but I don't know if they were a doctor or some other medical professional, but they said, but I don't want to take care of my health. I just want to go to a doctor. I mean, those were the exact words that came out of their mouth. And I was stunned. I was like, wow, well, that's, stunned and interested at the same time.
Your health. Yeah.
It's like, okay, so there just has to be this shift in perception and shift in approach to how do we manage health. And I think it is starting to happen. And I know that even though I really never saw myself as a what's called a trendsetter, or I don't know what the word is, but I've been at the head of this change, not really realizing that I was, and I don't know what the percentage is of people who understand health, and from the perspective that I do, it's quite small. But this needs to grow, and it will grow. It will grow over time. It's just how long it will take. I don't know that.
Yeah. It's not something that can or should be outsourced. It's something you should be conscious of for yourself.
We're always going to need support. We always need support in everything. So it's not like we have to do everything ourselves, but we just need to become more aware and start taking more responsibility. And the interesting thing is, I've worked with so many people who've gone to, they tried the traditional routes. They've and this isn't putting doctors down in any way, because everything has its place.
Of course, absolutely.
As far as chronic illness is concerned, especially chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, this sort of thing, in the mainstream or the medical profession, they're still a little bit in the dark, and people have had all sorts of tests and things are coming back negative, but they've still got symptoms. And when we work together and they make subtle changes in their life about how they take care of themselves, and self-care is absolutely critical, they get well. Because all we have to do is to take away what's causing the damage, and then the body restores its natural state of health.
Yeah. Some beautiful insights in here for us to take away and to ponder, but also to take action on immediately, and to really think through what is happening in our bodies. So thank you so much, Kim. We're out of time, but it was really important for me to share this one with you all before you set off on your journey again. The statistics around this are truly alarming, and there are no doubt so many connections, even just in this community, that could support you should you need it. So please take care of yourselves and your teams. Reach out for help. I would love to assist in any way that I can. And in the spirit of reaching out, I wanted to ask something of you. While I've run events and speaker series for many businesses, this is the first I've managed for myself. I would love to hear your feedback on it. I'll be sending you another email to ask for this. Please do spend some time thinking about the past 22 days, whether you've watched all the topics or just the ones that seemed most relevant to you. Your feedback is really important to me. So what did you love? What did you not love? What topics resonated the most? Are there any other topics you'd like to hear more about? Anything I didn't cover that you wished I had? I'll be in touch with all of these questions and no doubt a few more. I hope you'll give me a few moments of your time to let me know. It has been an absolute pleasure spending these past few weeks with you all and all of our amazing speakers. It truly has been an inspiring way to start 2021. And I hope it's given you some tools and some inspiration to make a few changes in the way that you do business too. Take care and please do keep in touch. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you, Marika.
See you later.